Seanasca Reddy as a cóide gael, this iarna is sulia iarna fuermule is iatsan at balia kun an cuarta figure shirt saifinis me hen a kilura cormila marke is dim Reddy cormila marke tina sagt an dinje sha a agro san uktran herin agus in raurire san winter herin. May I just say, Dame Reddy, and thank you for hosting this state dinner. And as I have just said, I appreciate your organising this, hosting us this state dinner, which offered for the President of Ireland and Sabina is honouring the people of Ireland. It is a great privilege to visit your beautiful country. I visited New Zealand last about 19 years ago, in very interesting circumstances of great change. And I do want to say what a great privilege it is to be back here as President of Ireland. I thank you for your warm words of commendation of the Irish contribution to New Zealand from its very earliest connections with Europe in particular. May I say how moved I was by the ceremonies this afternoon. And I just, in preparation for that, the acknowledgement of the important connection between land and spirit and people, the fact that it was presented that your reception for me contained such a very valuable component of respect for the culture of these islands, and how deeply moved I was by it. And I thank you, and through you, for all of the people involved. You're correct in saying that we have many things in common. Our populations are roughly the same. We may be divided by a great distance, but there are so many things so many areas in which we share very important values. Any of us who started out in politics a very, very long time ago couldn't but have been early admirers of the stand New Zealand took very early on in relation to the assertion of its sovereignty and defence of the principle of non-nuclear developments. Its considerable contribution in relation to the region in which it found itself, its support of peace. When Ireland joined the United Nations very early on, perhaps the act for which we are most famous, I suppose, or the one which we like to recall most, and I say so in the presence of our former Minister for Foreign Affairs, current Minister for Justice, Equality and Law Reform, Minister Flanagan, who is the accompanying minister for my visit. And I think that that important instrument was our support for our initiation of the non-nuclear proliferation treaty. We were joined by New Zealand again in the most recent treaty that sought, if you like, to address the issue of the incredible danger that nuclear armaments represent in a vulnerable planet. But then again, in the realm of international affairs, Ireland and New Zealand finds itself regularly cooperating. There are so many, and it's from these issues that I mention of building peace rather than the importance of ending the terrible poisonous dissemination of the capacity for destruction, for which we share a view, but also in the positive tasks of building peace. Our forces have worked together in East Timor, for example, and that was very, very significant. Many people still talk about their experience at that time. You mentioned as well, Governor, I think, the importance of sharing young people sharing the experience of each other's country. I'm very happy that the working holiday visa program is in fact working so successfully. I think as well, from the very earliest days, Irish people have come to New Zealand. And I think William Hobson is very interesting. Maybe another very famous visitor was much later, about 50 years afterwards, was one of the great founding figures in relation to Irish identity, Michael Davitt, who is associated with the Irish Land War between 1879 and 1882. And indeed, for those of us who are academics, one of the very important texts that came from New Zealand was that Michael Davitt drew on in his visit 1895. He spent 7 months visiting Australia and New Zealand. And he refers to a very famous document arguing that the land structure, land reform measures in New Zealand should build a better system, and that they should draw on the mistakes that had been made in Irish landlordism, and which had led, of course, to the Land War of 1879-82, and which would go on to lead to the Land Acts of the 1880s to the second decade of the 20th century. I think it was very interesting that you mentioned. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the three great founding instruments, the three great texts, which they've enabled people, those who had come to negotiate a relationship with those who had been there before them. The very first one in the Maori language, the second one, which is the Treaty of Utang itself, and then the great document about women's suffrage. I think these are just very, very important, and I very much look forward to seeing them. I think as well, I have to say to you that I'm delighted to be able to announce that the Irish government confirmed at its meeting yesterday that we will be opening a resident embassy in New Zealand. I very, very much look forward to that. It gives us an opportunity to not only just celebrate what in fact are deep connections so far, and they are very many, very, very many. I remember being very moved by all of this 19 years ago when I was here talking about matters of culture. I actually have a different view to most people in relation to how distance is presented. It is sometimes presented rather in the text, that very famous text, The Tyranny of Distance. I actually think distance can sometimes be a great advantage. And you've had some very, very fine original thinking in New Zealand, precisely because it wasn't as buried in the failing orthodoxies of the majority in other parts of the world. I encountered this when I was Minister for Culture. I convey very much the debate about the importance of culture. It's a brilliant, that was a brilliant discussion at that time in the 1990s from scholars whose work I came to know. Even today, somebody has given me a present of a new book on divorce in James Joyce and Ulysses, which is from Peter Cush. There are very many scholars in very many institutions doing first-class work on Irish material, and we're very grateful for that. Very grateful that there is, in fact, a Centre for Irish Studies, a chair of Irish Studies. The new embassy will give us an opportunity, not only of building on the past and building on, if you like, the knowledge that our young people will have from using the visa system, but there are very practical areas. We are both agricultural producing countries. Sometimes you might say, are we in competition for markets? We will in fact find ourselves more and more in cooperation for new markets. I think that this is something that will happen. Ireland has, even before the more recent circumstances that were donated to us through the decision on Brexit, have been interested in diversifying our markets. So therefore we have an interest in Asia. This was reflected in the decision of the Irish government to, for example, invest in the Asian Infrastructure Development Bank. We see New Zealand as one of the bridges towards what we may in fact be planning in Asia, and we also welcome not only our own individual initiatives, but what we may be able to do in cooperation with New Zealand businesses. I think, speaking of agriculture as well, we recognise the challenge that both of us face in, if you like, in reconfiguring our agriculture so that we will be able to meet obligations to which we, as international players, and indeed, as you say, Governor, respect, if you like, that which is agreed internationally, the rules-based system. And of course the most important achievements of 2015 were probably the decision in Paris in relation to climate change, the decision in New York in relation to sustainable development. And that means we have to take on the challenge of reconfiguring both of our agricultural production systems so that we are not in contradiction of that to which our people have committed to themselves. These are challenges, again, where we will be able to share scientific and technological capacities so that we address these issues in a way that will have an outcome that is of great advantage. I think as well, what I think is very important, is in relation to the world of sport. We recently in Ireland had acted as host to the Women's Rugby World Cup. I'm delighted that there is such warm support for what are our ambitions in relation to 2023. There's no doubt whatever, presidents of Ireland, the same as anybody else, are strongly supporting what we believe is to be and what is being recognised as a very fine bid from Ireland. Now, I think we very much appreciate the assistance we've been giving. On matters international as well, something Ireland in fact shares with New Zealand is in relation to the multilateral institutions. Our approach, your approach, Governor, I have to tell you that as somebody who was involved as a spokesperson of foreign affairs for a very long time, the New Zealand contribution, the Irish contribution to the United Nations and its agencies has always been something that is beyond the interests of what are small countries, with our population, each of us about 4.8 million people. They have sought to address the big issues, the issues of peace, issues of sustainability, issues of, if you like, creating the conditions for peace before conflicts break out, responding not just to peacekeeping, but also the prevention of conflict and so on. I think that is for that reason New Zealand and Ireland support each other when it comes to, for example, representation on the rotating membership of the Security Council. And this is something where, again, I would like to express my gratitude to the way in which we have been able to work together in that regard, as much as I congratulate too New Zealand and its work, its significant work on all the issues I've already mentioned, not just nuclear non-proliferation only, but something that I think to which the world must turn its attention again, and that is disarmament. I mean, really, to think if we've kind of that when we see the indicators that come again and again, the generation of which I'm part myself, can it look back and say that we've succeeded really in the way we should have in relation to global poverty, the reduction of diseases that could have been prevented, the incredible wastage of human resources, intellectual and practical, in the tasks of war. When we think, for example, of what faces us in 2050, when the continent of Africa, for example, will carry the greatest expansion in population, where 24% of the planet's population will be on that continent, and when 40% of the people, young people under 21 years of age. And we have to look and see, surely such an expansion on such a continent cannot be regarded as a problem. It should be regarded as a great opportunity, but it challenges the global community to actually rethink its models in relation to international affairs, including economics, including peacekeeping, including succession, forms of governance, respect for old cultures, respect for old wisdom, as well as new technologies, enabling science and technology to leap over borders to address these challenges. These are the kind of things New Zealanders and Irish people do together. And it is one of the reasons why it's such a great, great pleasure that we are now opening up residential embassies in both of our countries. It is also something I think that is important, is that there is no aspect of life, be it in relation to literature, culture, music, dance, be it in relation to respect for cultures that are both old and cultures that are continually renewing themselves in new forms. And for all of these reasons, it is such a very, very, very great pleasure for both Sabina and I to be here and to have been invited to make a state visit to New Zealand, and also how warmly we have been received by your good self, and how pleased, how honoured we are that this dinner is being provided to celebrate our visit. All I have to say, may our new decisions be ones that are not just consistent with the great friendship that already exists, but may this visit deepen and strengthen relationships that have been in fact so warm already, but have such enormous promise for the future. Níl avrasara mag will féidir nach will ach lína ag an puinte seo. Sean sagan san amatála tíoch san táchaí. Alone is more yen of Bunahar and gorgeous, not either winter Herin agus in winter New Zealand. May I thank you again, Governor.